1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi everyone, this is Jewish Talk, coming to you from NASA Community College on 90.3 WHPC, also streaming on nccradio.org. This program is later archived on Spreaker.com and all of your favorite podcasts. This program is repeated Sundays at 11 p.m. So hi there, my name is Rabbi Perl. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This all depends on when you are listening or watching. Oy Gewalt! You can actually see us on Facebook Live right now at WHPC's or my own page at facebook.com/Anshel Pearl. So hello on the radio, hello online, and hello to the world. Today we will begin our program by discussing the recent, of course, attempted assassination of President Trump. In order to give you a little bit of a background, I'm going to begin with a little story that I shared at our Chabad house at Congregation Beth Shalom Chabad this very Shabbos, this very weekend. Little story to put us into an understanding of what is going on over here, because I'm going to share with you some interesting background of the interaction between the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and President Ronald Reagan during his own attempted assassination back in 1981. So here's the story. A story, an interesting story, but it has a meaning to us all. During a visit to a community psychiatric hospital, David, a journalist, asked the director how the hospital decides whether or not a patient should be institutionalized. Well, replied the director, we fill up a bathtub with water. We then offer a teaspoon, a teacup, and a bucket to the prospective patient. And we ask him or her to empty the water from the bathtub. Oh, I see, says David. If the person uses the bucket, then they are deemed healthy. But if they use the spoon or the teacup to empty the water, they are committed. Actually, says the director, a mentally healthy person would just release the plug. So tell me, David, do you want a room with an east view or a west view? You see, I share this with you because it is human nature to see the world through the eyes of the tools we have been given. David thinks that the most efficient way to empty a tub of its water is by using the most appropriate tool in front of him. He doesn't even think of another option, like, why not simply unplug the drain? We see the world this way. We see what we expect to see and don't really allow ourselves to see it differently. Yes, this is human nature. Where we see death, we don't expect to see life. Where we see hard matter, we do not expect to see soft spirit. And where we see illness, or even we hope for a cure, we do not really expect to see a healthy outcome. With this in line, I continue this idea to emphasize an important point. Everyone is talking about the attempted assassination, but they're missing the main point. Let me continue. Another little story, and we'll get to the main point. We're typically reacting to this in the typical with the bucket or the spoon. We're not seeing the bigger picture. First, 3 aspiring astronauts from Chelm, a town not exactly known for its brilliance, and they were trying out for a new NASA expedition. First, they called in Yankel to examine his thoughts on the subject. If you could go to another planet, what planet would you want to go to and why? After pondering the question, Yankel answers, I would like to go to Mars because it seems so interesting with all the recent news about possible extraterrestrial life on the planet. Interesting, they said, and they told Yankel they would get back to him. Next they called on Chaim, and they asked him the same question. Chaim replied, I would like to go to Saturn to see all of its rings. Okay, he said to him, we'll keep you posted. Finally, they called Yossi into the room and asked him the same questions they posed to the others. Yossi thought for a while and replied, I would like to go to the sun. The people from NASA were incredulous. Huh? Don't you know that if you went to the sun, you would be instantly incinerated? Yossi smirked and put his hands on his hips. Are you guys dumb? I would go at night. My friends, apply these little stories to the current situation, the attempted assassination of the past president, Donald Trump. Back in 1981, there was a very warm relationship between the Rebbe and Donald Reagan. On many, many areas, there were correspondence, letters back and forth, and I will share with you a specific letter that the Rebbe wrote to the president at that time that related in a broader sense to not only the assassination attempt, but also the broader issue of are we going to react to it just on the surface, or are we going to look at it a little deeper? Perhaps there's a different way to look at that issue then, how the Rebbe looked at it back in 1981, and perhaps how we today, this Sunday morning, should be looking at the current situation. Back then, the Rebbe spoke at great length in a public gathering, a Farbrengen, and he spoke about this attempted assassination back in 1981. And he said, let's pause for a moment and look at the source of this. What could make a young man at that time try to assassinate the sitting president, Ronald Reagan? The typical reaction, as indeed we are now today, talking about the political rhetoric and the inappropriate talk, etc., then the Rebbe spoke that typically one would say that the reason why that young man tried to kill President Reagan, because he came from a poor background, it was all about poverty. But it turned out that the young man at that time came from either a middle or upper middle class. So he had everything in the world, and had been given everything in the world. And the Rebbe went on to explain that is the key to the source of such an action. And that is, when you give too much and you allow young people to grow up in an atmosphere where whatever you want to do is okay, whatever you want to be like is okay, there are no rules and regulations, and when you come to school, the priority is purely on giving and sharing knowledge with no aspect of ethics, of a standard of attributes of kindness and goodness, and most importantly, that don't just speak about you can't do certain things in society because of you'll get caught, or you'll be punished, you'll go to jail. But to emphasize aspects that there's an eye that sees or an ear that hears, that there's a creator, there's an almighty that watches over us, who wants us to contribute to the world and make the world a better place. When those kind of positive messages are not presented to the child, but the opposite, do whatever you want, be whatever you want, do whatever you want, you have these results. So clearly to the Rebbe, that the source of a young person at that time who had everything going for them, it wasn't like he came from a poor background and was complaining about, the typical, talk about money and those who do have money, those who don't have. He did come from a family that had everything, gave him everything. But one thing that was missing, they were not educating the child to know of their responsibilities, of their mission in this world, and most importantly, to introduce to their lives the concept of a creator. There's a responsibility in this world. You're a human being. You were here to contribute to this world. This is how the Rebbe spoke about this at great length and repeated the words that a young person, all of us, should always know there's an eye that sees and an ear that hears. And how interestingly, we talk about an ear that hears. So now I share with you the letter to the President Reagan after the assassination attempt. It's dated April 16th of 1981. And it's unbelievable how it applies to the exact same event that we experience here in the United States. It's written by the grace of God, 12th of Nisan, 5741, April 16, 1981. Just to quickly tell you that 12th of Nisan is a day after the 11th of Nisan, which is the Rebbe's birthday. And each year, for so many years, through all the different administrations, the president of the current president of the United States and all the different administrations recognized the extraordinary work of the Rebbe and proclaimed the Rebbe's birth date, the 11th day of Nisan, as Education Day, the importance of education, the key to the Rebbe's view of why we have a society that's breaking down today. There's an absolute missing key point in how young men and women are being brought up today. This is the letter addressed to President Ronald Reagan, the White House, Washington. Greeting and blessings. Thank you very much, dear Mr. President, for your good wishes on the occasion of my birthday. As I noted in my remarks at the annual celebration last night, your kind and thoughtful congratulation message is doubly reassuring. While all of us are still under the impact of the recent trying days for you and the nation, in connection with the demented attempt on your life, heaven forfend, it is remarkable and most gratifying that the President has been able to give personal attention also to matters which, under the circumstances, might be justifiably being postponed or overlooked. And the Rebbe continues, what exactly, so close to his own assassination attempt on President Reagan, he wrote this letter to the Rebbe and focused on a key component. And the Rebbe continues, your message, particularly in reference to the importance of emphasizing moral, for those who don't know how to spell that, M-O-R-A-L, emphasizing moral and ethical values in education, is as meaningful as it is timely. It is heartening to know that you, Mr. President, and your administration are committed to upgrading the education of all the citizens of this country. Please be assured that we in Chabad Lubavitch movement, continues the Rebbe, along with all good citizens of this country, continue to pray for your rapid and complete recovery, and for your robust, healthy, consistently thereafter, so that you can carry out the awesome responsibilities of the president of this great and leading nation in the world. In keeping with our basic belief that everything is by divine providence, how much more so being elected to the highest office in the land, we are convinced that God has endowed you with the capabilities and the strength to carry out your God-given responsibilities in the fullest measure with joy and gladness of heart. There is no better way in which I can reciprocate your good wishes than by reiterating the divine providence or the divine promise to our patriarch Abraham, where we read in Genesis, I will bless them that bless thee. May you and the First Lady and all your family be blessed with all good from the source of all blessings. With utmost esteem and blessing, cordially, the Rebbe's signature to this letter. I think it speaks to itself, dear friends, of how the Rebbe, in his response to the attempted assassination to President Ronald Reagan, the sitting president at that time, how the Rebbe responded to him and appreciated and really more than just hinted that the key to society's proper conduct, where we wouldn't have these kinds of activities going on, boils down to there's something missing in the education of our young men and women. It's not just about going to school and learning how to get a trade or a profession. It's about molding those young men and women to take their leadership position, whatever it may be, and make an impact on this world. But it comes with a responsibility. It comes with a knowledge of the importance of respect for each other. It comes from the recognition there's boundaries, there's a right and there's a wrong, and not everything is just relevant, whatever you want. It is paramount for parents to be more open about teaching their children that there's a creator in the world, that there's an eye that sees, and there's an ear that hears. There's a message of life, of holiness, of purity, of caring that this world provides and has enough space for all of us to live by. So we join, as the Rebbe did then, in wishing the president, past president, of course, Donald Trump, with a speedy recovery. And may all of us learn from this, that perhaps in our own way we could make a difference. And one of the ways the Rebbe spoke about all the way back was by simply introducing a moment of silence in public schools, in all schools. And during that moment of silence, it would be dedicated to what the children's students, their parents, would tell them what to think about. And all of us as parents want our children to grow up not shooting anybody and not hating anybody or putting anybody else down. Being respectful of other people's properties, of appreciating with gratitude how we were born and what our purpose is in this world. That is a responsibility of parents. We've somehow abrogated that and sent it to school. And then the school itself is just focused on, parting information and knowledge and missing the important points. So perhaps if you're listening today and you have an influence in the school district, concept so important, it's urgent really, to bring in this moment of silence where, without crossing the borders of church and state, you can help your child to think about kindness and goodness, and to recognize that even in a school environment, there can be a moment. Each of us on our own, with the responsibility to the parents, and of course, we're not asking the teachers or the administration to tell them what to think about, but a moment that you step out in that environment and think about what your parents are teaching you. And of course, it would make the parents wake up and say, maybe I'm not really bringing up my child properly. I'm giving them everything in the world, all vacations and the best clothing and the best shows and everything else. But am I giving them? And I remember from Rabbi Hechter, Olav Shalom, the famous Rabbi Hechter, he said, we've been so busy giving our children what we didn't have, we've forgotten to give our children what we did have. And that is a sense of responsibility, a recognition there's a creator, there's an almighty in this world who has provided us with the opportunity to live on the planet Earth, to make it a home, a beautiful place for the Almighty God. We send our best wishes to, of course, to to Donald Trump and to the entire family. Let us continue ourselves on a number of issues that are important to us. And I say good morning to Lavana Lichter. Welcome back. To Jean Brandenstein, Jonathan Wolf, Miriam, David, and to Linda Zellickson, Davida Zellickson, all those joining us, listening to us on the radio at 90.3 WHPC. And of course, you can see us on Facebook, Facebook.com, FacebookLive.com, at my page, Anshul Perl. For many in Israel, on the surface, life is going on as normal. Children are in camp, coffee shops and malls are full, families are taking vacations, some within Israel and some abroad. And yet, beneath the surface, as the war continues to rage in the south and the threats of war erupting in the north looms, nothing is truly normal. This is true for all who live in the Holy Land of Israel. But it's most true for those with family members serving in the IDF. At the beginning of the war, several people commented that when asked if they have relatives in Israel, they answered yes, 7 million. If you're part of Am Yisrael, then you must be Im Yisrael, connected to our brothers and sisters and caring about them. That makes every soldier our son or daughter, our brother or sister. And yet, while we must have concern and unease for all of our family, we cannot begin to compare to actual parents and grandparents of soldiers, many of whom haven't exhaled or slept in 9 months. This past week, I read of an important reception that took place for the parents and grandparents of IDF soldiers who gathered to schmooze, to enjoy delectables, and most importantly, to give strength to one another. And I read very intently of the reflections, the thoughts, the stories, the fears, the worries, and the tremendous faith of this wonderful group as they went around introducing themselves and describing who they have in Israel and what they are doing in the IDF. It hurt to hear how many described their children or grandchildren losing commanders, fellow soldiers in their units, and living with the loss while continuing to fight. Many described incidents in which their child or grandchild survived situations in combat that could have cost them their lives. All talked about trying to live ordinary lives and go about their business while in the background of their mind there's a constant worry and fear, concern for their child or grandchild. They wake up several times a night. They incessantly check the news. Every time the phone rings or buzzes, their heart skips a beat. Every Shabbos, they are anxious for the Havdalah service and to be in touch with what is happening and to confirm that their loved ones are okay. Parents described worrying not only about their child in the IDF, but about their own parents and how they were dealing with it. Grandparents shared how concerned they are not only for their grandchildren serving, but for their children and how they worried they must be. Despite feeling utterly unqualified, I'd like to share the following. First, I would say to these parents and grandparents how much I am in awe of them and their families. That they all clearly did something incredibly right and righteous in producing children and grandchildren who would voluntarily move to Israel or who courageously serve as lone soldiers in the IDF, who are putting the safety and the well-being and the future of Am Yisrael on their shoulders. They should be overflowing with pride and satisfaction. The gathering was to strengthen each other as children and grandchildren have the honor to don the uniform of the Jewish army that is not waiting for others to determine our fate, but who are courageously and bravely fighting, eliminating enemies, and purging the world of evil. These parents and grandparents, their children, are holy people, engaged in the holy endeavor of protecting Am Yisrael. And as ones who produce such holiness, they should be filled with pride. Most of the observations they shared that night were understandably and even very predictable. But there was one more theme that emerged from many of the participants that evening that I hadn't fully appreciated until then. And it is something we can all make an effort to do better on. While here, these parents and grandparents looked like they're living normally. Nothing in their lives feels normal right now. It is hard enough to live with a constant worry and fear, but it makes it much worse to do so feeling alone or that others don't acknowledge or even care. Several describe that when they interact with friends in synagogue or elsewhere in the community, they aren't even asked how their children and grandchildren are doing in Israel. While what is the latest, they don't ask, what have you heard from your child or grandchild serving the IDF? And as I said, it is hurtful to them, and it leaves them feeling much alone. Loneliness compounds the tension and pain of navigating these difficult times. Some mention foolish and even hurtful questions or comments that are made. Worse than not saying anything at all. In the Mishnah, Pirkei Avos, chapter 6, Ethics of the Fathers, tells us that one of the 48 ways that Torah is acquired is noisei ba'ol im chaverei, which translates carrying the burden with your friend. When someone we know and love is struggling, our mandate is to lessen their burden, to carry it with them, and to ensure that they don't feel they bear it alone. When we demonstrate that we care, when we are mindful to acknowledge the difficulties, we are noisei. We lift the burden, which makes it a little bit lighter for the one who has to carry it with them constantly. My friends, let us learn something from that. When we see their parent or grandparent say something, ask how they're doing and show that you care. Let us daven for them. It is the least we can do to lift the burden and make it just a little bit lighter. May we speedily merit that our gatherings should be one of Seudas Hadar, of thanks for the return of all the hostages and of all the soldiers being safe and secure. You know, we're now in the middle of the very heavy, so to speak, wedding season. It's summer, it's vacations, heat waves. And I had the merit this past week to attend 2 weddings and a Sheva Brachas. So I thought I would share some insights on the weddings, choosing a spouse, which is one of the biggest decisions we ever make, and how to know we're making the right choice. So we extend our best wishes to the Kastner family on their wedding for their children, to the Watman family on the marriage of their children, and to all of us out there in the radio land, in the Facebook world. If you're going to a wedding or it's your own family, Mazel Tov, we wish you and your entire family many, many good years of good health to enjoy many wonderful occasions. So let me share with you, how do you know you're making the right choice when you're choosing your spouse? Number 1, my friends, you can take out the old-fashioned pencil and write this down, or get out the old tape recorder and perhaps record what I'm about to share with you. You see, one of the biggest mistakes couples make is thinking that they will change their spouse after they get married. So again, are you trying to change your partner? What do we say? Oh, he'll be perfect when I get him to go out to and work out in the gym. Or she'll stop spending so much once we start our life together. Chances are this will never happen. Don't assume that somehow your situation will be magically different. You can't transform others to meet your needs. You can only transform your expectations. Stepping into marriage means that you are content with the person you hope to share your life with. Acceptance brings peace. Otherwise, you are setting yourself up for a life of tension and disappointment. Number 2, in choosing a spouse, do you have the same values? When a couple is dating, infatuation can set in. You are fascinated with this new person in your life. You don't see the long-term picture looming ahead. A conversation about values seems unnecessary. After all, you're in sync. You're in love with each other. Shkoyach. You love spending time together. You enjoy the same shows. You appreciate the same restaurants. And vegetables as well. And you have a great time just hanging out. Time passes and you assume that your values are similar. It's important to be sure that you see eye to eye on important topics that will affect family life. What happens if you want to be a stay-at-home mom and he expects you to work? He envisions sending his kids to a Jewish day school, and you are against parochial schools. What happens then? When he enjoys smoking recreational marijuana, and you are adamantly opposed to all drugs, what do you do now? You need to know your values, your non-negotiables, and to be sure that you are aligned to similar principles. The more you have in common, the smoother your marriage will be. Hello, you can wake up now. If never explored, topics such as finances, religious observances, and parenting can become a source of major disputes between husband and wife. Let me move on to number 3. Are you being realistic? People often envision married life as a fairy tale. You can't imagine being furious. You can't imagine having arguments or days when you can't believe that this is the person you chose to marry. Real life means that you will have disagreements and arguments. You will be hurt and be hurt. And at times, you will look at your spouse and wonder, did he really just say that? Does she live on another planet? Striving to never argue is unrealistic. Thinking that the person you've committed your life to will come home every day and act madly in love is simply not how life rolls. Be prepared for ups and downs. Embrace differences in a positive way. Decide how to handle disagreements respectfully. Create the standards of speech. Recognize that there are times that everyone needs a little space and quiet, especially after a hard day. This does not mean that your marriage is falling apart. Being realistic means that you ask real questions about daily life. How do we plan on dividing up our household chores? Who will be in charge of paying the bills? Who decides what to spend money on? How do you see our future? Where will we be spending the holidays? Without setting common goals, you cannot journey together successfully. I'm not finished, my friends. You can put up your comments and your posts at our Facebook Live page and join in the conversation. Number 4, do you see red flags? We're talking about, ladies and gentlemen, about how to make sure that we've chosen and to live happily ever after. I'm sharing this with you because this is a very heavy, thank God, wedding season. We have weddings to go to. So it's time to think a little bit about our spouse, our relationship, and what marriage is all about. You see, when you're in love, you can overlook the red flags that otherwise ring alarm bells. Years later, when couples run into trouble, they realize that the behaviors causing friction were there all along. Addictions, bad temper, excessive drinking, gambling, unambitiousness, disrespect, a wandering eye, emotional and mental instability. When asked, spouses recognize that if they would have taken some time to contemplate, they would have noticed these harmful habits. But at the same time, they chose to conveniently look away. Sometimes friends and family try to point out problematic behavior, but they refuse to listen. Be honest. If you feel uneasy, don't ignore your emotion. Think it through. Better to be truthful than fall into rationalizing and excusing bad character traits and dysfunction. I remember way back when our children were Hashem, when they were starting to go out and going out on a date to get married, we asked the Rebbe's secretary what the Rebbe's advice was when you go out. What should you be looking for? Obviously, in the community I grew up, you get introduced. You don't go out to a bar or hang out someplace to find someone, to meet someone. You have a formal introduction. There's a matchmaker or the families bring the boy and the girl together. This is what the Rebbe's advice continues to be, make sure that the person you're meeting is healthy, which means in every aspect of health. And number two, has good midas, has good attributes. They're kind, they're giving, they're thoughtful. Wow, what a difference. We don't go out simply to fall in love with each other, if we can, if that's possible. We go out to see and to exchange outlook. And I remember myself, when we first got together, it was all about the kind of life we would do. Would we go into working, a profession? Do we dedicate our life to the community, where we would live? These were the conversations of the interactions with each other. All the other small stuff, there's plenty of time later on to talk about which restaurant to go out. So, number 5. Is marriage being used as a refuge? You see, my friends, marriage is not a hospital. It should not be used as a place to heal wounds. Be sure that you and your partner are not hurting and seeking an escape hatch. Life together cannot be built on running away from dysfunctions or seeing your partner as a replacement for the parent you never had. Some unhealthy considerations that singles have. We've been dating so long. It'll take too long to find someone else. I don't have the patience to start again with someone new. Being alone scares me. These are not good reasons to commit your life to another. Marriage is not disposable. You don't just try it out and if it doesn't work, trash it. Building a life together with the person you love is the greatest gift that you can give yourself. Take the time to think, to talk, and to create a home that fills your days with joy. Now, on the same vein, are doubts before marriage normal? A question: is it normal to have doubts during an engagement? Someone wrote, "My friends tell me that I should be 100% certain that I've made the right decision. But I would be lying if I said that I had no doubts. Is it a bad sign if I'm just not sure?" There are 2 types of doubting. One is an alarm bell that should not be ignored. The other is a sign that you have made the right choice. The great Kabbalist Rabbi Levi Yitzchok Schneerson, that's the Rebbe's father, wrote a letter to his recently engaged son, at that time was the Rebbe, who would become the Rebbe years later, explaining that engagement and doubt go hand in hand. The union of soulmates is such a lofty and super-rational event that the mind cannot possibly grasp it. Something is at work that is beyond our understanding, and therefore there's always an element of doubt. This doubt is not an indication that you have done something stupid. On the contrary, it means that you have touched a level that lies beyond the confines of the human mind. Finding your soulmate is such a miracle. Our logic cannot process that it is really possible, that it is really true, that I found the one for me. This wonder is a kind of positive uncertainty. Is this for real? I don't believe this is happening to me. So the fact that you feel unsure may be a good sign, indicating that you've been touched by the hand of God and are left in wonder that it could really be so good. However, this only applies when the doubts are vague and general, doubts that anyone could have. Will I be happy 20 years from now? How can I know for sure? Maybe there's someone else better suited for me. What if we change? These questions are normal. They would be. There is no matter that who you are. They would come all the time, whoever you're engaged to. So there is no reason to be alarmed. In time, the doubts will disappear in a puff of smoke. But if your doubts have a strong base to them, like you're questioning your partner's good character, or you suspect that your feelings have not developed to the extent that they should have, then you need to seek advice as to whether you are doing the right thing. Here's a good way of testing whether the doubts are cause for concern or not. My friends, it's Sunday morning. I'm giving you free advice. It'll save you going to the therapist this week. So here's a good way of testing whether the doubts are a cause for concern or not. Are the doubts stronger when you are with your fiancé or when you are apart? Normal doubts come when you are lying awake late at night or when you're alone and your mind is churning. Ignore them. But doubts that arise from actual interactions and real conversations need to be closely examined. Engagement can be an emotional roller coaster, and when we are emotional, we are rarely able to see clearly. Seek the advice of a wise and experienced outsider who will be able to tell you whether your doubts have any foundation or you are experiencing the humble disbelief of finding your true soulmate. Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me, dear friends, to sharing this information with you. Let's continue. What if love burns out? A question. A good question. Do a husband and wife need to be together 24/7? Is it okay to have a life outside of marriage? I often joke when I perform a marriage that you want to keep your marriage life alive and fresh and exciting. Every week, choose a nice restaurant with nice food, nice music. That's what we do every week. I go on Monday and Bloomer goes on Thursday. And my engineer is like falling off the floor right now. Please stand up. You can't believe that I said that, right? You couldn't believe it. That was great. That was great. It is okay to have a life. Is it okay to have a life outside of marriage? I sometimes feel guilty if I spend time alone or with friends, as I should always include my spouse in everything I do. But then sometimes I feel smothered and need some space. That also makes me feel guilty. I'm happily married, but not sure what's right here. Any help you can offer? A question that came our way. Let me try to answer this. Love is like a fire. It can generate a lot of light and a lot of warmth. But to keep any flame alive, it needs to be fed. If you don't keep throwing logs on the fire, it will fizzle out and there'll be nothing left. The fuel of love is time spent together, shared experiencing, and emotional bonding. Without this nourishment, even the strongest love can dissipate. If we become too distracted with other things, if we are too busy for each other, the love goes stale, and we soon drift apart. Like a fire unfed, a love unattended eventually boils out. And they actually named a whole arena called the Burn Arena. But logs are not all a fire needs. A fire also needs air. All the wood in the world would not be enough to maintain a fire if the fire can't breathe. And the same goes for love. To be able to love, we need space for ourselves. We need some oxygen. Without it, we lose our individuality, having nothing to bring to the relationship, and it becomes boring. Allow each other to explore interests, maintain friendships, and have quiet time outside of marriage is not a threat to the relationship. On the contrary, it strengthens it because a relationship means connecting to someone else. And to be someone else, you need to have a life. For someone to love you, there has to be you independent of your partner. Of course, this has to be within reason. The fire needs air, but we don't want to blow out the flame by creating too much space. Most of the time, we should want to be together with one that we love. Any relationships or activities that our partner is uncomfortable with should be avoided. Our marriage also comes first. But if you truly love someone, you have to let them exist out of you, and you need to nurture your own existence too. Make it clear to your spouse that you're not running away. The Talmud tells us, If a husband and wife are worthy, the divine presence rests between them. This means that for God to be there, He needs some space between you for Him to rest. Therefore, I recommend you study and observe the laws of mikvah. They create a rhythm in your relationship, giving time for physical passion and then suspending that passion to allow time for emotional bonding. This provides your marriage with a framework to keep fueling your flame while giving it air to breathe. Never feel guilty about being your own person. That's who your spouse fell in love with in the first place. You know, as I said, I merited to go to a number of weddings this past week. One was in Westchester, overlooking the Sound from the north, and one was in Bayville, looking at the Sound looking to the Sound from the south. And so both of the chuppahs were overlooking the water. In one place it was quiet, very, very hot. Another place it was pretty nice, with boats passing by. Really beautiful. And, of course, highlighting a wedding is the dancing. And someone asked me a question at one of these weddings. At Jewish weddings, this person said, I've seen a dance where people stand facing each other in two lines. They run towards each other, meet in the middle, then run backwards to their original place, only to do it again. Is there any meaning to this dance? I told them that I had thought about this question as well over the years. Different groups and different, kind of weddings and theme weddings. People dance in circles. They talk about the first dance. So I'd also checked out what's the meaning of this kind of two groups of people in two lines running back and forth and meeting in the middle and going back. What's the significance? I would call it the dance of tension. What do I mean? You see, the wedding dance symbolizes the rhythm of a healthy relationship. That's part of the whole dancing, the whole excitement. What do you think there's dancing in the wedding for? To pay the caterer, to pay the musicians. Thank you for them and thank you for them. But there's something deeper. The whole atmosphere of a wedding is setting the foundation for their life. Their life should be filled with joy, with dance. In a loving relationship, a couple experiences moments of closeness and love, as well as moments of distance and tension. It is not possible for two human beings to share an intimate space and not go through some rough patches. If a relationship is to be real, it probably won't be smooth. But this tension is exactly what makes love so powerful. Every moment of tension in a loving relationship is an opportunity to get to know each other even better. Why are you upset? What did I do to hurt you? Where did we misunderstand each other? What can we learn from this episode? The only reason you retreat from each other in order to come back closer again. You can take a step back so you can then rush forward. The divide that was created by your little falling out provides the fuel for you to come back together, closer and stronger than ever. So as we dance around the newlyweds, as we dance in all the different kinds of marriage, the dancing that we see at the marriages, we're actually giving a powerful message. My friends, you think you went to the wedding there to dance and have a good time and drink as much Black Label on rocks as possible because somebody else is paying for it. No. They're going to a wedding. Every single person who goes to a wedding is an integral part of the wedding. Every thought that a person has while they're in someone else's wedding has an impact on that man and woman who are getting married. It's a powerful message. The dances as well. If you live together, it will invariably happen that each of you will make mistakes. There will be times of misunderstanding and distance when you feel that you have drifted apart and the love is being strained. The secret? Even in those times, never turn your back. Even when you are retreating, like in that dance, never turn your back. Even when you're retreating, always face each other. If you do, the tension itself will propel you back towards each other. That's the background to that kind of dance as well. Never fear those moments of tension in your marriage. Rather, see them as doorways that lead you to a deeper connection. In the dance of love, the good times bring you close, but the tough times bring you even closer. I must tell you that in recent decades, we have seen leaps in our focus on human emotions, an unbelievable amount of data, of analysis and advice. One of the things I love doing when I travel is to go into the stores, the Hudson News and stores like that, and look at the books. I rarely read secular books. If I need advice, I need insight, I go to my learning, I go to the Torah. But I see every time I go that despite the unbelievable amount of information you can find with AI and online, there are so many books being put out on every nuance of an emotional well-being as being addressed, giving people advice, etc. I want to share with you very briefly today, there's a new beacon that has emerged. A new book has just been released. It's called Letters for Life, Guidance for Emotional Wellness from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson of righteous memory. Over a period of some 50 years, tens of thousands of men and women of every age turned to the Rebbe for his wisdom in writing and in person, seeking his advice for problems big and small. A young rabbi, author Levi Shmotkin, sifted through more than 20,000 letters of the Rebbe's correspondences and through 1,500 interviews to identify the core principles that the Rebbe gave of a guidance in those interactions. He put it together. The result is this book called Letters for Life. The author writes, and I quote, "No anthology of abstract, this is not an abstract kind of hypothesis, but it's a collection of practical tools delivering the Rebbe's messages on many of life's challenges." I must tell you, I bought the book. The Rebbe's approach is elegant in its simplicity. It is a steadfast focus on moving forward and upward, imbuing every moment with meaning and consistent growth. The goal is not happily ever after. It is about the moment before us and the choice we can make right now, a conscious and deliberate one. And from this intentionally emerges the great joy of fulfillment. The Rebbe's path was less about the promise of a rose garden and more about planting our own roses, dealing with the thorns that comes from faith while nurturing an endless optimism. I must tell you, the book provides a refreshing departure from all the kinds of books that I see on the shelves, from the conventional dwelling on pathologies, on trauma, as important as that may be at times. Of course, the author himself writes, he's very emphatic that this book of these letters for life is not obviously a replacement for necessary medical advice, but instead it offers profound and simple directives such as look outward, discover the transformative power of acts that better the lives of others. I know from personal experience, when you help someone else, you yourself come out a better, kinder, caring, giving individual. Uncover the emotional resilience that comes from altruism and community. I often pause in my shul every Shabbos and thank everyone who takes time out to come to shul and spend 3-4 hours in shul, laughing, learning, and being inspired, taking time out from the regular. That's taking space. You come out of that experience so much better, more than any vacation in the world, when you come together in an atmosphere of giving. When you go on a beach and you go in to the bar, no, who comes out drunk? Who comes out, browned over? It's yourself. But when you come to a shul, I'm giving you as an example, you become part of community. You hear about community programs. You see about other people. You come to appreciate what you have because you come to see other people may not have a life as good as your own. You come out bitter. It is time to give. It's a time when we learn. That's what Shabbos is all about in general. But I focus just on the time that people, and I encourage everybody listening, my friends, please go find your synagogue, your temple. You're welcome at mine. Spend a few hours away from all the other things that only focus on yourself. It is time to give and to give generously. A young man was told, this is how the Rebbe said to him. This young man had some dark ruminations in his life. He was thinking of the opposite of life. The Rebbe said, time to give generously. The opportunities are many and the need is great. The Rebbe told him, you help others, you will help yourself. Here is a roadmap the Rebbe provides for cultivating not just personal and own well-being, but actually brings a brighter world for all of God's children. There was one lady who had a large family, and she came from a very difficult background, and she came to the United States from Russia, from displaced camps, and she, in a private audience, she shared her feelings of despair. What was the Rebbe's response to her? Dance! Go and dance at as many weddings as possible. It's a well-known lady, and she went to everyone's wedding. Whether she was invited or not, whether she knew them or related, she went. This is how she overcame her feelings of despair, by dancing. Dance at as many weddings as you can. There were at that time in that neighborhood many couples without parents and family nearby. She could bring joy to them, and she did this for decades. I share with you, look online, Letters for Life by the Rebbe. This is your host, Rabbi Perl, wishing everybody a wonderful good week. Best wishes to the United States of America. Speedy recovery to Donald Trump. All the best to everybody.